Hi, this is Ohfor. Let's create our own books. Okay, so before we begin, I just wanted to add a little bit of context. See, creating books and notes and parchments and whatever should be one of the most ridiculously simple things to do in the mod, because essentially it's just taking an item from in-game, a book or a parchment or a note or whatever, and then changing the text of it. And that would be it, essentially. And for some reason, this relies on the ability to manipulate what is known as localization strings. So basically every piece of text we do in the toolkit is stored in a localization format. So basically it says, well, this is English, and then it would be possible for an external translator to then do a Chinese or German or whatever translation by just changing a few external files. And then if you switch your game to German, for instance, then it would pick up German language files, and that would be that. So it's a relatively normal and straightforward operation, but that part of the tool is not available to us at present. And I say at present because I do have some good news, and it's one of the reasons why I've been delaying making this video. But if we take a look at Community Update 30, the patch 8 or update 8 or whatever we call it, that is scheduled to land, I don't know exactly when, but sometime early 2025. And they do have in their notes at the very beginning, they have this section here where it basically says, this is not the end yet. This is not yet the end for our mod tools. Okay. With the continued support of mod authors in the community, testing out new features, we will have big updates still to come, including adding even more functionality to let you tell your own stories. Now, this is, of course, a bit of a vague description, but to me, it can actually only mean one thing. There's parts of the tool we simply don't have, which is one would be what I'm referring to here, the ability to better work with text and longer text, thereby stories. And then there's definitely also the inability in the tool currently to work with the quest journal system. So it's not really possible. Well, it is, but it's you have to sort of go a pretty long way around to get to it. But it's not really possible to add journal entries and add new quests and add new functionality that way. So I can only assume that this deliberately vague statement here involves that, which also means that any video I do on this right now has the risk of becoming very obsolete because the toolkit will update. Now, if that has happened by the time you watch this, I will post a link to my replacement video or updated video up here on the right. So if you see that popping up, go there instead, because it will have updated information for you. But until then, let's just dig in. It's not that bad what we need to be doing to do this ourselves, even with the current version of the toolkit. So unlike what I normally do, let's actually start by getting the hardest stuff out of the way. The hardest stuff being the off-toolkit stuff that we are going to have to do to get this working. And the reason I put this up front is because if this sort of holds you off and scares you, then just wait. Wait for the toolkit update. It's only like a month or two away, maybe even less. And then we'll be able to do this whole thing in the toolkit without any risk of misfortune, should I say. So I am going to assume you're very familiar with the file system on Windows, and a little bit familiar with how zip tools and text editors work. And as I said, if this is not for you, I completely understand. There's just no easy way to go about this, and I also cannot go through all the basics involved. So for that, if this is the case for you, I completely understand. It is the mission of this channel to just primarily or exclusively work within the toolkit, because that's the whole point, right? If we wanted to do low-level file manipulation and so on, this has been available for modding for Baldur's Gate 3 for years, and that was just never a thing. There are other authors out there who deal with that. That said, we are going to need a tool that is very well known in the community and is sort of a default go-to for manipulating game files or looking at game files, and it's called lslib. So you go to github.com/norbite/lslib. I'll put the link to this in the description. But that's basically the tool you want. As you can see, it's a tool created by a person or persons called Norbite. I think it's just one person, but whatever. And it's a tool for manipulating. So you can see here, Divinity Original Sin and Baldur's Gate 3 files. So you say, what? Divinity Original Sin? Well, it's the same, well, not entirely the same, but it's based on the same engine that Larian Studio uses. So there's a lot of similarities between the two games, or two sets of games. So to download it, you go to Releases. There's a prerequisite here. It will tell you when trying to run the download if you don't have what is known here as .NET 8.0. And if that's the case, you go here to Microsoft's site and download it and install it, and that'll be the end of it. And then you download the export tool, and you unzip that to a folder of your choice, and then you run it. And if we take a look here, so here I've unpacked it to export tool. See, it's version 1.19.5, and inside this we have converter app, and it looks like this. So if you can get to this step and you can call up this app and you see this, then you're good to go. Then we're all set and we can move on. So if you want to follow along in the tutorial, maybe do that now. And if this gives you trouble, there's a lot of debug and assistance blogs and whatever on the net on how to get this running. There really shouldn't be a lot to it. There's the prerequisite, there's the zip file, you unzip it, you run, you're done. Right? And then you end up here, and then we'll return to, in a few minutes, we'll return to what do we actually need this tool for. Make sure that Baldur's Gate is selected up here if it isn't by default, so that it knows it's operating in the Baldur's Gate version of the game engine. Okay. And with that in place, we can now return to our comfort zone, the toolkit itself. So we'll just leave this for now. We're going to return to it in just a little bit. But for now, we are going to need to do some basics. If we are to introduce a new book to the world, this should come as no surprise to viewers of this channel. We are going to need to create a new item for it. So let's see if we can find a book of some sort. So we have base book, scroll letter. So it really depends on. So there's tablets, books, scrolls, whatever. So whatever is appropriate for you, I would say. Pick one that has the icon and look and whatever that is somehow appropriate to you. It doesn't really matter. Let's go with book A, open. And then create new from selected, as we've done a million times before. And so we can set a display name. So this would be tutorial mod book 1. And then for the name down here, tutorial mod 1. Okay, I mean this can be anything as long as it's something unique for your mod. We create that. And then we just take this filter off. We go to tutorial mode 2. And here we go. Just to be sure that the UI doesn't mess with us. And then for that, this would have some stats as well. We're going to need our own stats. So I open up the stats editor. And then we go to tutorial mode 2, stats. And so this is an object. So here we go. And what did we call it? I'm just going to use the same name. So what I've begun doing, this is a practice I'm not entirely sure, but I'm reasonably sure I want to recommend. So you can always tell them apart. I give my stats entries the same name as the root template name, and then I suffix it with stats, underscore stats. You don't have to do this, it doesn't really matter, they can be the same, but I've also had some people getting confused in some of my earlier tutorials because I use the same name both places, and they think I'm referring to stats when I'm referring to root template and vice versa. So this makes it pretty straightforward. And as for the parent, I am just going to use, if I could type, a object book. All right, and there we go. So now we have that in place, and the root template should be, so we're going to copy that. So we copy the GUI to clipboard, go back here, paste it in, there we go. And you could of course manipulate value and whatever. That's all fine. I am not at this point going to make any other changes to any of this. So we save that and wait for it to save. And then we're almost done. Almost. We are going to need to go. So here we could go directly to the file system. Because again, as I said before, string manipulation and localization files, etc., are not really available in the toolkit. But that's not entirely true. If we open up the UUID editor, and then we go here, we expand tutorial mod, and then let's see if I can find it. Yeah, tooltip extras. So there is an area in the UUID editor that allows us to insert strings or tooltip extra text. So it's basically when you're creating tooltips, there are some texts that can be invoked, and we can use that because that is essentially creating text files for us. Now it's a very simple table, UUID and text, and UUID you don't mess with. So let's expand text and saying this is, notice how, okay, so I don't think I've covered this before. There's a drop down here, and that is because behind the scenes, when okay, let me just finish this. This is our tutorial mod text, and I press enter on that. So now I've done this, and to us it looks like, okay, so there's a field, see UUID, it filled in itself, that's fine, it's supposed to. And then it has this text here. But that could be more texts in our mod, and you can select them here. And that is because inside the game, whenever it displays a text, when you attach this text to anything, it's going to display not the text, but it's going to go, hey, resource manager or localization manager or whatever the game calls it internally, could you please fetch me string and then this UUID here? Okay, and even that is not entirely true. There's something called a handle, which we'll see in a minute, that is basically requesting. And then the localization manager in the game will go, okay, fine, the game is running in English, so I'll go get the English version of the text. But if your game is running in German, it will go, okay, let's see if I can find a German version of this UUID, and then get that text instead. So it's not stored directly, it's all stored as references. This is handled behind the scenes in the toolkit, so I've never really talked about this. But that's essentially how it is. If I am to create a new entry, I can basically go put some stuff in here. Now it has created a new entry for us. And there could be another entry with the same key. Let's actually see what happens if I do that. No, not allowed. Okay. So again, these tools are somewhat limited in the current version of the toolkit. For now, we'll just use it so that in the future, once we've set up our book or scroll or parchment or whatever, we can go in here and modify the text without actually having to revisit the file system and go through that whole process. So I'm going to save this. So now our book is almost ready. So we have the stats object and we have a text format. Now we just need to tie it all together. And I say just, but this is now where we need to get down and dirty with the file system. This is where the toolkit ends and our external tooling begins. So we're going to need this app, lslib, the converter tool, in just a bit. But first, you are going to need to go to your mod localization folder. So your mod folder would be wherever your Steam library is, common, Baldur's Gate 3, data, mods, and then the name of the mod. In our case, that's tutorial mod 2. So in my case here, d / Steam library, Steam apps, common, Baldur's Gate 3, data, mods, tutorial mod 2. Okay, once you found this folder on your drive, you go to the localization. And then in my case, this is English because I'm running in English. It might be different for you, but the principle will stay the same. Go in here and you will have english.xml. And we need something from this file. So I'm going to right click it. And then I'm going to open it up. So you're going to need a text editor of some sort. It could be Notepad. It could be as simple as Notepad. If that's what you have, just go with that. Otherwise, I'm using Visual Studio Code here. Some people like Notepad++. If you don't know what any of this is, your only option will likely be Notepad, and you will get a file. It won't be color-coded like this, but it will still be fine. And we are after one thing only. We are after this content UID. So remember I said there was something behind the scenes called a handle? Well, this is what it is, right? So this handle would be unique for the language. Hang on, did I? Yeah. Or not. Or maybe this is unique and then there will be different language versions of it in English XML and German XML, etc. So I actually can't remember, and it's not all that important for our purposes because localization is not really something we're dealing with here yet. And again, I'm waiting for the toolkit to give us these possibilities. But we are after this handle, right? This is what we need. So we're going right click and copy that. Don't make any changes to this file, and if it asks you if you want to update or whatever, don't save, don't do anything. So just to be clear, when working with these files, so this is what is known as XML, which is a format definition or syntax for how to store or structure text. Let's just keep it at that. And if you break that format defined for XML, then your toolkit will crash when you try and open it. It's that simple. So don't do anything here. We don't need to modify this. We just need this handle, this content UID. That's it. Okay. And now it gets a little bit tricky. So we go back to our file system, and then we go one step up, and then we are going to create a new file. So right click, new text document. So we're not creating a text document, but this is just the easiest way to get to it. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to call that tutorial_books.lsx. And then it's going to warn you like, what is this? Are you sure you want to do that? And yes, you are. So again, if you're familiar with file systems and file types, etc., then all of this should be no problem. If you're still trying to follow along, to do this, you need to be able to see file name extensions, and I think there's an option for that somewhere. Yeah, here. So I'm on Windows 11. If you're on Windows 10, this is going to be slightly different, but you need to see file name extensions. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the .text and the .lsx, and then none of this would make any kind of sense. Okay, and then you right-click that, and then you go open with, and in my case again, Visual Studio Code. So here we are. We now have our tutorial books.lsx file, and it's completely empty. What do we do with that? Well, we are going to need to create a translation key, which is what we can't do with the toolkit. Now, there is a guide on mod.io that I'm following myself as well, because otherwise I'll forget a step here. So I'll also link that in the description. So a guide to creating custom scrolls and books by Grumpy Wumpy. And so it's basically going to be covering the same steps I'm going through here, but obviously this is a video and reading isn't for everyone. However, this is the XML, so this is another XML thing, and I wouldn't recommend trying to type this up from scratch. So we select that, and we copy that, and then we move this out of the way, and we paste that in here. Okay, so now we are almost where we need to be. We need to replace two things. We need to, I'll go back to the other file. This is the handle, hash, whatever. We copy that, and we put it in here. Okay, so this now matches the string we created in the UUID editor. Okay, and everything else, ignore that. Build, swaps, adjacency, whatever, don't care about. Just only do this. Make sure it's handle equals and then quotation mark, your handle and quotation mark, no spaces, no extra spaces, nothing. It looks exactly like this. And then we are going to need a UUID for our new localization key. So I'm going to call it tut.log like this. You can name it whatever as long as it's something unique and you own. So tut_log_ tutorial mod 1. Okay. Then we save that. Control S, and just to be really sure this works as intended, I'm going to open it. I'm trying to think if this should be syntax highlighted, but it probably doesn't know what an indexes file is. So here we have it. We now have, so this is the missing link, right? This links to this handle, which in turn links to this string. Okay, now we can go full circle. This is what we can't do in the toolkit. Now all that's left to do is to convert this file that we've created and handcrafted into something that the game can read and understand. And for that, we need lslib, right? Because that's one of the things the tool does. It's able to pack and unpack game files. So we're going to have to get it to do that for us. So I'm going back here to my localization folder. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste that in here, and then click the three dots. No, hang on, sorry. I need to go to the LSX, LSB, LSF, LSJ tool. So these are different file types that the game deals with. So input file, .lsx. Sorry for all the blurry, but it's none of your business what is on my drives and where and whatever. So we double click tutorial books lsx, right? And then we're just gonna copy that and change the X at the end to F. Okay, so input file would be tutorial books lsx that we just handcrafted and created. Output file would be LSF, which is the game native format. And then we press convert. And now, as we can see here, it has created an LSF file for us. And we can assume that is perfectly fine. So we can try and open this, but this won't make sense. This is a binary file. And yeah, Visual Studio Code doesn't know what to do with it. But it's created, it's done. It's basically an in-game representation of this key that we did here. And we are done outside the toolkit, at least for now. Okay, so now we just tie up all the loose ends. I'm going to select this log tutorial mod 1 that I created. And then we are going back in the toolkit. And we can close the UUID editor. And we can close the stats editor. And then we, on the root template itself, we are going to need to find the use actions. And so we can see here it has a use action of book. And the book ID is gen on readable, which is not useful. So we're going to put in, paste in log tutorial mod 1. Okay, so that is this string here, matching this string here. Okay, and oh, there we go. And we apply that. So now this is set. There is, however, and then I'm going to save that. There is, however, at this point, a need to restart the toolkit because I don't believe the toolkit has picked up our localization file. We've created a new file with some new strings and etc. And it would not recognize that yet. So I will restart the toolkit quickly and be right back. And here we are, back in the toolkit. It's time to test out our work. So let's find, and then I'm going to copy, so selecting my our new book, and right click, and then copy name GUI to clipboard, and then switch in game. Hello, Will. We have a book for you. So there's various ways we can give this. I normally do spawn item and then paste in my name GUID that I just copied to clipboard, and then put my mouse here and press enter. And what do we have here? Tutorial mod book 1. Let's pick that up. And read that, and we have a success. This is our tutorial mod text. We have successfully created our own, not particularly interesting, but we have created our very own book. And we can now, from this point forward, we're done with all the file systems and the converter tools and whatever, because we can now modify this text in the editor, not in a little bit of a strange way, right? But let's give that a go. So we can go back. We leave game mode. We go back to the UUID editor, and then we go tutorial mod 2, and then we find our tooltips, and here we have the text. And now we can change that. This is our updated. Now the important thing here, just a little tip, don't if you don't copy new text into this, just always edit it, because if you take a text from somewhere else and paste it in, then the underlying handle will be different, and then you need to update the whole thing again, and you just don't do it. It's a tutorial on its own to try and unravel all that. So for now, I'll just do this as our updated tutorial mod text, and I'm going to save that. Now, by default, your toolkit will auto reload stats when you save, but I don't know if that's the case in the UUID editor, so we can just make sure by going to tools and then reload stats, then for sure we know it has updated. And then we go back in game mode. Hello again, Will. And open the inventory. Now, here we go. This is our updated tutorial mod text. Great success. To wrap things up, I think we're actually pretty good for time, but I just wanted to show there's a few things we can do. Now, the text itself is interpreted by the game engine as a form of HTML. If you're a web developer, you will know what that is, and if not, you don't really need to know. But it's a way to mark up text to give it additional sort of attributes. Now, I'll show just a few. So the way this works is we can do, there's two things you're going to need to be familiar with. This is the less than sign and the greater than sign. Right? They're right next to M on a UK keyboard. If you're on a local keyboard, I don't know where it is. You're just gonna have to find it. And you can use this to create a sort of elements. So if I do less than and then B like this, so now I've created this. I'm instructing the text engine to write out our text and then shift to boldface for the word updated, and then less than, and then I'm going to say, and now, so I can't explain HTML in this tutorial, but you don't need to understand it. You can just copy what I do here, if you know, that'll get you pretty far. So B for boldface, and then end boldface. So what we should see now is our text, where updated, the word updated is in bold, and that's essentially it. So let's save that. Now I'm just going to not manually reload stats just to see if the game does it on its own, because otherwise we're wasting time. So let's go. Yes, it did. So now we can see the word updated is in boldface. All right. There's a few, so it's not full HTML. If you're a web developer, there's many things that you might expect it to do that it won't support. But let's try a few of the common ones. So U would be for underline, and I would be for italics. So I'm not saying this is not going to be pretty, we're just testing out some functionalities here. So now we should see updated in bold still. We should see tutorial underlined, and we should see the word text in italics. Let's see if that's the case. No, not entirely. So, and this is what I mean by the fact that it does not support a lot of the HTML tags that you would expect. And if it doesn't understand it, it's just going to cut out your word and saying, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you want to do with this. This is not working. So bold works, underline doesn't, italics doesn't, and that's, you know, that's fine. However, there are a few other things, so I'm just going to take this out again. Let's leave it with bold. And then there is a command for break. So break is a line break. So we can add in a few of those, and then we do love Ohfor and enter the line. So this will force line breaks into our text, hopefully. So we go back, and then we take a look, and indeed. So our full text is back now because I've removed the tags I didn't understand, and here we go. So we can keep writing and do whatever here. It's gonna be, it can be as long as you need it to be. There is one last thing. I think it will support if we do the command font color equals yellow, and then like this, maybe. We'll see. I haven't done a lot with this, as you can tell. So I'm experimenting a bit here, and maybe that's worth a video on its own in its entirety when I figure out exactly all the commands and everything you can do with this, because you can probably also create tooltips and links to spells and whatever. I just don't know how any of that works. So let's see if this works. That would be nice. If we can change the coloring. I don't actually know. Awesome. So from an accessibility standpoint, this is terrible. It's almost impossible to read. That, however, is not the point I was trying to get at. It understood the fact that I wanted this text in yellow. So it's going to support, you can try blue, magenta, red, etc. These should work. And if they don't work, you'll see immediately. And that, in essence, is it. You could, of course, so this is a book, and we saw it on the ground looking like this, like a book. It could be a scroll. You can pick anything as your root template. You can create as many of these as you want. Obviously, you will have to go through the process that we went through. If you are creating multiple books, you are going to need to create more entries here. And the way this works is you don't copy the entire thing. So what you do is you copy this node. So a node is essentially, I simplified a bit, this is the key, right? This is the one you repeat. So if you had another book and it had another string, then you would do like this, and then you would give it another UUID, and you would have another handle here and another text in here, right? And so that's how you repeat the process. You can add more to that, and once you've added in all the translated string keys that you want, you run them through the lslib the converter tool, and that's essentially it. And then you can create as many entries inside the UUID editor as you want. And on that note, that's all I have to say for now on books and scrolls, custom books and scrolls. As I did mention at the beginning, possibly the toolkit will update to make this whole process different. I will have linked that video in the beginning. I'll link it here as well, up top right corner. No, actually, I don't know if I can put two links in a video. But whatever, then go find that for updated information. But until then, have fun modding.